Morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Sandra Anguiano, and I am a Business Opportunity Specialist here at the Orange County Inland Empire District Office. Today, we are going to be talking about the SBA's certification programs. I do want to mention that our office here locally in Southern California, we cover Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. But the programs are available nationwide. So if you are joining us from another county or even from out of state, just know that the programs are available nationwide. So the same rules, regulations apply for everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the 8A Business Development Program, the HUBZone Program, the Woman-Owned Small Business Contracting Program, and the Veterans Certification Program. For those of you who have joined online via Teams, please make sure to use the Q&A box to type any questions that you may have as I go through the presentation. We do not have the function to unmute the lines, so I will be checking the chat or the Q&A box to make sure that we address all of your questions. If you have any specific questions that you'd like to discuss offline, I will be sharing my contact information at the end of the presentation so that you can reach out to me directly. I also would like to mention that you will receive a copy of the presentation as well as a link to the recording. So if you want to re-listen to anything or click on the live links, you will have access to that in the next 48 hours. But before I go ahead and jump into the programs, I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick introduction to federal government contracting. This may be useful information for those of you that are just starting off, or maybe it's going to be a refresher or clarification for those of you who have already started the process. So let's go ahead and jump into the intro. So the first question that comes to mind is, what does the federal government buy? So the federal government buys just about everything from office supplies to janitorial services to the construction of government facilities and much, much more. They are the largest procurer of goods and services with set annual goals for their huge budget. As a small business, you should do your market research to determine if the federal government buys the product or service that you're trying to sell. We recommend that you do your market research, to find out what the government is buying. And in the next few slides, we will cover a few useful links for you to use as a starting point. I would also like to take this opportunity to point out that there are various levels of government and not all certifications are equal. So the state has its own process of procuring, cities have their own programs, and even large businesses and prime contractors have their own process of doing business. So it's important that you identify who you want to do business with to determine what certification it is that you will be needing. So where can you go to conduct market research for opportunities within the federal government? So for all government certifications, you will be required to have a SAM account, the System for Award Management. So this is something that you want to get started on as soon as possible. At this site, you can search by keyword, by industry. You could even, go by geographic location if you're looking for a specific state, county, city, if you're looking for a specific agency. All that information is listed here. You can find opportunities at sam.gov. This is an essential resource because all federal contract solicitations or invitations to bid with a value of $25,000 or more are published here. You can set up your profile for free, or you can reach out to one of our resource partners to help guide you through the process. There are a few steps and some accounts you have to set up before you can create your profile. So it is easier if you get the assistance of one of our resource partners to make sure you set that up correctly. We also have the Dynamic Small Business Search System, or DSBS. This site allows you to look at which contractors are selling to the federal government. It helps you identify your competitors. This system is managed by the SBA, and the DSBS will list your SBA certifications. So the DSBS profile feeds off of the information entered at sam.gov. We also have the Interagency Directory, or ICD. So this is a central repository. It's a central repository of indefinite delivery vehicles awarded by the federal agencies, where the indefinite delivery vehicle is available for use at both the intra-agency and interagency levels. So this includes, government-wide acquisition contracts, multi-agency contracts, other indefinite delivery contracts, federal supply schedules, BOAs, basic ordering agreements, and blanket purchase agreements. Then we have USA Spending. So this site provides information on how the federal government spends money or how they forecast to. USAspending.gov is the official source for spending data for the U.S. government. Its mission is to show the American public what the federal government spends every year and how it spends the money. You can, if you visit the site, you can follow the money from the congressional appropriations to the federal agencies and even down to like local communities and businesses. Next on the list, we have the GSA e-library. This is your one source for the latest GSA contract award information. So if you're looking to get like on a GSA schedule or anything like that, you want to make sure you visit this site as well, General Services Administration. And then we also have here the Acquisition Central site. So this site lets you search for forecasts by agency. So each agency has its own website. You would have to visit multiple websites to find this information. But this website here consolidates all of that into one site. So the law requires agencies to compile and make available projections of contracting opportunities that small, minority, and women-owned businesses may be able to perform. So each of the links that you see listed on this slide will take you directly to their sites. So this is a great starting point for you to conduct market research. You'll also notice that each site is going to offer different trainings and webinars, and they'll have, listed their points of contacts for questions. So I invite you to check those out when you receive a copy of the presentation. The federal government has prime contracting procurement goals that must annually be met. So there are certain set-asides for certification programs and socioeconomic categories. Of the huge budget that the federal government receives each year, 23% of their total contracting dollars must be spent on small business. Specifically, there are targeted set-asides and acquisition goals for the programs that are listed here on this slide. So 5% must go to woman-owned small businesses, 5% must go to small disadvantaged businesses, such as 8A firms, 3% must go to HUBZone businesses, and 5% must go to service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. Now, set-asides are reserved for small businesses between $3,500, which is the micro purchase threshold, to $250,000, which is the simplified acquisition threshold. In order to be eligible for the SBA's certification programs, you must be a small business in accordance with the SBA's size standards. The SBA determines the size standards for a small business, and there are two ways that size is looked at. So size is going to be determined either by your average revenues over the past 5 years or by the number of employees. For the number of employees, this is going to apply to manufacturers, dealers, and wholesalers. So if you are in any of those industries. So this is going to depend upon your primary industry code. You will need to determine your primary industry code in order to determine if you fall under the threshold for revenue or number of employees. There's a link for the size standard table provided on this slide. There are hundreds of NAICS codes, so the first step would be for you to identify your code, and then you're going to look it up to determine if you are considered small based on SBA's size standards. So for example, here the screenshot we have, and I think this one may actually be outdated, the 236115 has a threshold of 39.5 million. So you'd be considered a small business if your total revenue is under that amount. Now, if you're in the motor and generator manufacturing, the NAICS code 335312, you would have to have less than 1,250 employees. So what types of businesses are getting contracts? This slide provides an overview as to how or where the government spent its money. It is broken down by industry codes. That's why it's important to identify those NAICS codes, right? It's these industry codes. So there are various sectors, and depending upon which product or service you provide, then that's the number you would fall under. We cannot stress enough how important industry codes are in the federal government. You want to make sure that you're familiar with them. You're going to hear this over and over again, right? They're going to ask you, what's your NAICS code? What's your NAICS code? The North American Industry Classification System. Essentially, what that means is that you pick the code that best suits your business, and you're going to use that code, when you're asked to provide, what industry do you work in. No one assigns you a NAICS code. You can't, apply for it or anything like that. You alone have to identify your industry code. So these NAICS codes are used to track what the federal government is buying. You're going to have this number listed on SAM to demonstrate that you can provide a specific product or service. As long as you have a business, you must have a business activity. So your code merely describes your primary and secondary income producing lines of business. So most businesses have more than one revenue producing line of business, but you will need to identify one industry as your primary source of income. Of course, if you can provide additional services, you can list those on your profile as well. If you can provide that service and have the appropriate license, you can list those codes as secondary. But wherever you generate the most revenue from, that should be your primary industry code. As you start working with the federal government, you may want to look for opportunities as a subcontractor. These primes or large businesses are the ones, that get contracts, and the subs work under them. So if you aren't at the level to perform on your own as a prime, you're not ready to pursue those larger contracts yet, you would work as a subcontractor. So this is a great opportunity for small businesses to gain capacity and experience. You can list this as past performance for working as a subcontractor. Large procurements have subcontracting requirements, so prime contractors are looking for small businesses like you. You'll want to visit their websites or contact their supplier diversity department to learn how to do business with them and become a sub. For subcontracting opportunities, you can check out Subnet. Subnet is a database of subcontracting opportunities posted by large contractors looking for small businesses to serve as subcontractors. The SBA maintains a directory of federal government prime contractors with subcontracting plans, so you can check that out as well. And then the GSA publishes a subcontracting directory for small businesses that are looking for subcontracting opportunities with prime contractors. The directory lists large business prime contractors that are required to establish plans and goals for subcontracting with small businesses. So you want to make sure you check out that link there as well. Now, as you start digging into contracting, you will discover that there are many tiers. So here are a few tips that we offer for starting to work with federal agencies. We recommend that you focus on a few agencies at a time. Do your research and concentrate on those. There are numerous agencies and they all buy various things. You want to make sure that you review forecasts to see what's coming and that you visit their websites for the latest information. You can contact the agencies directly. As I mentioned, for every website that you visit for the agencies, they're all going to have a listed Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or an OSDBU office, and there you can learn how to do business with them. You must register on sam.gov. Every contractor must be registered if you want to do business with the federal government. This is where the federal government will confirm you are a legitimate business, and this is also where you will be paid for providing your product or service. So this is going to be step number 1 for any SBA certification program. Your SAM profile will be verified and must show as active before you may begin the application process. Setting up a SAM profile is completely free, so make sure you are at the right site. If you are asked to pay, you are in the wrong spot. This process can take 4 to 6 weeks, so you want to make sure that you start setting it up as soon as possible. And when you get to the site, make sure you see that little flag in the right corner that says Official U.S. Government Website, 100% free. If you'd like more general information on government contracting, I invite you to visit SBA's Government Contracting Classroom. Here you will find 5 to 6 minute videos on various topics related to government contracting. There are even videos on how to set up your SAM profile, how to contact an OSDBU office, and many, many more. I recommend you check it out if you have no knowledge yet. These classes are free, and you can play the videos as many times as you'd like. And the SBA also has a YouTube channel with helpful videos, so check that out as well. If you are interested in doing business with other government levels, we invite you to visit their websites. All of SBA's certification programs that we're going to be discussing today are at the federal level. If you are looking to get certified as an SBE or DVBE, you would need to go through state procurement. If you are within our Tri-County area, you can reach out to each county as well to learn how to do business with them, with Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino. Different organizations administer different programs, so their process is going to be separate and maybe completely different from the SBA applications. If you need assistance with applying for these other certifications, you can reach out to your local Apex Accelerator, formerly PTAC, for free assistance. These are funded resource partners by the SBA, and they are actually partially funded by DoD as well, and they assist small businesses with procurement. We also have, the Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, the Women's Business Centers, Veteran Business Outreach Center. So a number of resources, free resources that are available to you. It's really important to find out who you want to do business with first to learn what you need to do in order to participate in their programs. So just, make sure you identify the certification you need before you go and apply, spinning your wheels, going through all the documentation you would need to provide. So this concludes the introduction to federal government contracting. I hope you have found this information useful and that you visit the links when you receive a copy of this presentation. Let me just take a quick look here at our chat before we go ahead and jump into the 8A Business Development Program. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm not seeing questions there in the queue, but please, if anything comes up, please feel free to type those out into the Q&A box. Okay, we will now go ahead and get started with the information on the 8A Business Development Program. So the 8A Business Development Program was named after a section of the Small Business Act and designated to help small disadvantaged businesses to compete in the American economy and access the federal procurement market. It was created to help firms that are owned and controlled by at least 51% socially and economically disadvantaged individuals compete in the American economy and access the federal procurement market. We will talk about what it means to be socially and economically disadvantaged when we get to the eligibility criteria. We will also go over what it means to be owned and controlled and how the SBA reviews that information. This program provides entrepreneurs with targeted management and technical assistance to help them compete for contracts and other business opportunities. This program offers a 9-year term and a one-time only participation. And we'll dive a little deeper into that in the next few slides as well. So what are the benefits of the 8A Business Development Program? Why should you get certified into this program? As previously mentioned, the federal government's goal is to award at least 5% of all federal contracting dollars to small disadvantaged businesses each year. So, if you get the certification, you're eligible to pursue those contracts, that are set aside for SDBs. As a participant in the program, we will provide you with management and technical assistance, marketing and outreach assistance with the mentor protege and joint venture programs, and you will have access to surplus property. So this is tools and equipment from the state for pennies on the dollar to help you, further grow, expand your business with this equipment that's no longer needed by the state. Of course, the biggest draw to the program are the contract set-asides and sole source award opportunities. So these set-asides can be for up to $4.5 million for goods and services and up to $7.5 million for manufacturing. For reference, we have the numbers here for FY 2023. 2024 should be out soon, but in 2023, firms won $76.2 billion in federal contracts. That's an improvement from FY 22 that we have referenced here as well, $69.9 billion. And I expect the numbers to be higher for FY 24 once those are finally published as well. As a small business, you can also participate in the SBA's Empower to Grow program, E2G. This was formerly known as the 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. You may have heard that before. So you can take advantage of various courses and trainings that are available to you as a small business at no cost. So the program provides eligible disadvantaged U.S. small businesses with free business courses, tailored training, one-on-one consulting, things like that can support your growth, operations, hiring, regulatory compliance, and government contracting competitiveness. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to visit the link to check out the resources, the free resources that are available to you. Now, in the next few slides, we will be talking about the eligibility requirements for this program. So each category listed here on this slide is something that you will be asked to provide information for in order to determine your eligibility for this program. We will talk about ownership, control, U.S. citizens, small business size standards, potential for success, good character, social disadvantage, and economic disadvantage. On the right is the reference, that red text for the Code of Federal Regulations, in case you're interested in looking up all the legal terms that constitute this program. And then at the bottom here, we have a note that you have to be in business for at least 2 years before applying for this program, and I'll explain why in the next few slides. I'll explain why that rule exists for this program particularly. But first, let's talk about ownership. We require that the individual upon whom eligibility is based directly and unconditionally own at least 51% of the firm. This must be direct ownership by the disadvantaged individual. You cannot be owned by another company. You cannot be owned by another trust. You must be the individual owner at 51% or more. Now, that can be more than one person to make up the 51%. If you have more than one owner, each individual will need to meet every eligibility criteria in order to be eligible. If you are married and residing in a community property state, such as California, it may be necessary to submit a notarized transmutation agreement to ensure that the disadvantaged individual owns at least 51%. That's because community property rights impact unconditional ownership. Now, there is no requirement on the structure of the business. You can be a partnership, an LLC, a sole proprietorship, whatever business structure you would like. But here at the bottom there, we have some examples of what the SBA will require to demonstrate that 51% ownership. We're going to take a look at things like the stock certificates and ledgers, your tax returns, IRS, 1040, Schedule C, Schedule E, if that's applicable to you. So what we want to see, or the reviewer or analyst who's going to review your application, what they are going to be looking for is proof that on paper you can demonstrate that you own at least 51% of the business. Control. We require that the individual hold the highest position, be the highest compensated, or you can provide information as to, why it's in the best interest of the firm that others receive a higher compensation. But the individual must devote full-time hours at the business concern during normal business hours. This includes any outside employment or business interests which may hinder the firm in achieving the goals and objectives of the 8A program. The individual must have the required management expertise to operate the firm. So the firm must show that one or more socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, make the long-term decisions of the business, control the board, have the ability to hire and fire employees and things like that. So we need to make sure that you are in control of the business, that the individual that's claiming the disadvantage has full control of the business. For all of SBA's programs, you must be a U.S. citizen in order to participate. You will be asked to provide a copy of your U.S. passport or certificate of naturalization. To be eligible for the program, you must be a small business. So you're going to have to identify your primary NAICS code, make sure you fall under the threshold either for the revenue or the number of employees. Now, the SBA looks at the firms and the principal's relationships with other businesses and other individuals through prior relationships, family ties, and common investments. So if you have ownership in other businesses, you must disclose that information at the time of application. Keep in mind that this is used to determine the size of your business. So just to make sure that you are indeed a small business under SBA's size standards. Potential for success. The firm must have the necessary track record and financial capacity to perform successfully on contracts awarded in the 8A program. The firm must meet potential for success criteria. So typically this is demonstrated by the firm being operational at a minimum 2 full years, and this is going to be verified by the revenues reported on your business tax returns. We want to make sure that participants in our program are ready and that they will be successful in the program. We don't want this to be a burden or cost you money. We want you to make money and win contracts. So the federal government has certain requirements for businesses that are looking to bid on projects, which are very different from the private sector. And in anticipation of that, we do a precursor and review your business. So we're going to take a look at your financial capability. Do you have sufficient capitalization, financial performance, bonding capacity, and manageable debts? Your managerial and technical capability, your performance on previous contracts, that the firm has the necessary personnel, licenses, certifications, facilities, and prior experience. Your management capability, the education, experience, and training of CEO and other managers, the magnitude and complexity of past or current jobs, and your management systems. Your qualifications for ability to perform on federal contracts, any relevant contracting experience, ability to meet federal procurement policies. We just want to be sure that if you get into the program, you can take advantage of those contracting benefits and you'll be able to successfully bid and win on these contracts. So you must be in your primary NAICS code for at least 2 full years immediately prior to the date of your 8A application. So what does that mean? So for at least 2 years prior to applying, you must have been doing business in that primary NAICS code. This is another important reason why you should identify your code. Sometimes businesses transition from doing one thing to another. It could be in a related field. It could not. You could totally switch industries. So what we are looking for is proof that you have been doing work in the same NAICS code for at least 2 years. And you have to provide proof that you have generated revenue in that NAICS code. Now, if the business has not generated any revenues, like you don't have any tax returns to prove that, that for the preceding 2 years you have been in business, then you could request a 2-year waiver. So you can request this waiver if either you haven't been in business for 2 years or you switch to a different industry where you can't demonstrate that you've been in business in that same NAICS code for 2 years. If that's the case, you can request a waiver, but they do have a few conditions that must be met before that waiver can be granted. So you will have to show proof that you have substantial business management experience. You must demonstrate technical expertise. You must have adequate capital, and you must have a record of successful performance on contracts. The waiver or a waiver can be granted, but you're going to have to address each of these elements in detail. You'll also be asked to provide copies of contracts, letters of reference that can verify your successful contract performance. They can also ask for your copies of invoices and proof of payment on invoices. So if your firm hasn't generated revenue and you can't provide any proof, then they're not going to waive this 2-year rule. So you would have to wait in order to apply for the program. So you should really, strategically consider the timing on applying. If your business experience is limited and your exposure to the federal marketplace is at its infancy, maybe you should wait a little bit. Businesses who have an established track record as a subcontractor or prime contractor at the federal level, they tend to experience greater growth and higher levels of success and sustainability than those businesses that are just starting in federal contracting. So really think about, when you should apply for this program. The program, as I mentioned, is a one-time only 9-year term program. Think about when to apply so you can make the most of the limited time and increase your chances of winning contracts. Ask yourself these questions and be honest, right? If you're a single person company who has never done a contract larger than $250,000, you may want to focus on building your business a bit more before applying for the 8A program. Some firms may be eligible for the 8A Business Development Program, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready to contract with the federal government, right? Just because you check off like the criteria for it. So ask yourself these questions if you're on the path to success. Is your business procurement ready? Make sure you are ready to do business with the government before you go and obtain any certification. Can you identify the federal agencies that purchase what you sell? Have you already conducted that market research? Can you provide examples of similar work that your firm has completed that generated revenue, right? Are you prepared to access a line of credit or performance bond if that's required for your industry? Do you have financial and payroll systems that are compatible with the government's requirements and that can produce financial statements and payroll records? Or even something as basic as, have you selected a NAICS code? Are you already registered in SAM.gov? Have you created a capability statement? So, just really think about it because we don't want you to, come in and waste those 9 years because you won't be able to reapply one-time only participation in this program. So your potential for success will depend on what stage your business is in. Are you just starting off or are you already a well-seasoned business? Now, another criteria for eligibility is good character. The SBA wants to make sure that participants in our program have good character. So the SBA looks at the following to make this decision. We're going to take a look at any adverse information regarding criminal conduct, violations of any SBA regulations, debarred or suspended firms or individuals, any principal who is incarcerated or on parole, submission of false information during the application process or after approval, any firm or any of its principals that fail to pay financial obligations to the federal government. For that last point, examples of that are any like tax liens or being delinquent on a student loan. If you defaulted on an SBA loan or any federal obligation will lead to them finding you do not have good character. If in the past maybe you had a tax lien, but now you're on a payment plan, that's fine as long as you can show that you have that payment plan and that it's current, then that would be okay. But just be prepared to submit documentation on that as well. Okay, we're now going to discuss the social disadvantage. This is one of the big criteria to participate in our program. So the SBA requires that all 8A applicants establish their 8A program eligibility by completing a social disadvantage narrative. So the definition of social disadvantage means that an individual has been subjected to racial, ethnic, or cultural bias within American society because of their identities as members of groups and without regard to their individual qualities. So the discrimination or bias experienced by an individual must be chronic, substantial, and have occurred within American society. An individual only needs to establish their social disadvantage once for the entirety of the program. We're not going to ask you, to submit a narrative every single year for your 9-year term. Now, the SBA must determine that the discrimination or bias experienced by an individual is chronic, substantial, and has occurred within American society, so not within another country. And this discrimination must have negatively impacted your entry or advancement in the business world. Now, to demonstrate this social disadvantage, business owners should include the elements that we have listed here on this slide. An indication of which identity or identities is or are the basis of social disadvantage. So clearly describing which identity or characteristics you possess which have been subject to discrimination helps the SBA understand your experience and eligibility for the 8A program. So we're going to take a look at, race, religion, ethnic origin, gender, sexual orientation, identifiable disability, isolation from American society, and others. Those are all categories of identities or characteristics which you could choose to include in your narrative. So, it's important to specify the identities or characteristics within the category which form the basis of your social disadvantage. For example, if you say you are a subcontinent Asian American woman, that would be like a specific identity within the race and gender category. So make sure you tie that into your narrative when you're completing that. You're going to need to provide a description of incidents in which bias or discrimination has occurred. These experiences should be related to education, employment, and business history, including current or previously owned companies. If you visit the link here at the bottom there on the guide for writing a social disadvantage narrative, you will find more examples of what to include in your narrative to make sure you get your point across. Now, a socially disadvantaged individual must also be economically disadvantaged in order to participate in this program. So you have to be both socially and economically disadvantaged. It's not one or the other. It has to be both. If you have more than one applicant, all applicants must meet the criteria as well, because you're making up that 51% ownership, right? So in order to be economically disadvantaged, the SBA reviews the individual's personal net worth, which must be less than $850,000 after we exclude all legitimate retirement accounts and any equity in the primary residence and the applicant firm. We also review the individual's total asset level, which may not exceed $6.5 million, with the only allowed exclusion being legitimate retirement accounts. And then the individual's average 3-year income may not exceed $400,000. Now, community property comes into play as well. So California is a community property state, so we are also going to take a look at your spouse's assets. We are going to split everything 50-50. So whatever you claim to own on your own, 50% goes to your spouse and 50% will go on your personal financial statement for purposes of determining your adjusted net worth. And then your salary or income will be verified through your personal tax returns. Now, if you're interested in calculating this for yourself before you go ahead and apply for the program, you can look up SBA Form 413, which we have noted here at the bottom. You can do a quick Google search for this, or go on our website and look it up, SBA Form 413. This is going to help you list out your assets. So if maybe there is something you didn't think about that we would ask for, that form will help you line by line calculate what your adjusted net worth would be. So those are the eligibility requirements for the 8A Business Development Program. During the application process, you will be asked questions in all of these sections. So just, make sure that you are honest and forthcoming when you complete the application. There are specific questions that are asked on the application that are, a big part of the eligibility criteria for the program. If you don't disclose information when you're applying and the SBA discovers it, it's going to create more issues for your application. We're often asked like, oh, what if, I lie about something on there, right? Or what would have a really bad impact on my application? If we see that you have a pattern of constantly getting in trouble, that you're in and out of jail, you have felonies or violence, maybe your business integrity, if you're writing bad checks, things like that are really going to have a negative impact on your application. Minor things that really wouldn't impact your application, if we discover that you have an underage drinking citation or a citation for recreational drug use, jaywalking, smaller things like that are really not going to impact your application, but, just make sure you're forthcoming with that information, right? Like if it asks you anything like that, be honest, and that way it avoids it doesn't slow down your application process, right? If we discover it on our own without having you disclosed it. So be careful with that when you're completing the application. When you are ready to apply, please visit My SBA Certifications, certifications.sba.gov. That blue button will link you right to it. And you can complete the application there and upload your supporting documentation. At the end of my presentation, I will provide some additional information on this portal, so stay tuned for that. Now, there are authorized resources available to you on SBA's website, as well as a dedicated email box for general information. Here locally, we can answer general questions about the 8A program, but we have no say when it comes to your actual application, right? Like we don't do the review here locally. They go to our servicing centers. We have two, one back east and one here up in San Francisco. So we can't tell you like, oh yeah, we're looking at this or that. Like, no, we just see the determination once they've said, okay, yeah, this one is approved. And if you do get denied, they will send you a letter. You can come to us with that letter and we can kind of help guide you if you're looking to reapply. I can also recommend that you reach out to one of our resource partners, the SBDC, SCORE, Women's Business Centers, Veterans Business Outreach Centers. They can help, review your application before you submit it, just to make sure, you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. You can also visit my SBA Certifications resources link for all tools, frequently asked questions, and program information for 8A Business Development Program. We have been receiving questions about the DEI executive order. The the impacts the 8A program, and the answer, we received questions about how that has impacted the 8A program, right? And the answer to that is that the 8A program is a race-neutral program. Any small business can apply to the program. This program is statutorily authorized, and SBA will implement the law. The SBA will continue to work with procuring agencies to award 8A contracts where appropriate. If there are any updates, any changes, you will see those posted on SBA's website, so I invite you to check that out for the latest. Okay, so this concludes the information on the 8A program. I don't see any questions in the queue at the moment, but let me take one more look before we go on to the HUBZone certification program. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in now to the HUBZone program. We're going to cover the program benefits and the eligibility criteria. So what is a HUBZone? A HUBZone is a historically underutilized business zone. The program was designed to help small firms in certain communities gain access to federal contract opportunities. HUBZone areas are typically areas of low median household incomes or high unemployment, or both. We will talk about how you identify these zones in the following slides. The HUBZone program certifies the eligibility of businesses in disadvantaged communities to compete for federal set-aside contracts, offering employment and growth opportunities where they're most needed for positive economic impact. Now, the government has a mandate of awarding 3% of all prime contracting dollars to HUBZone certified firms. In FY 2023, the federal government spent $17.5 billion on HUBZone contracts. And at any given time, there are about 5,000 small firms that are certified into this program. Some of the benefits for this program are that there are contract set-asides and sole source opportunities for firms that are certified. The HUBZone firms also receive a 10% price evaluation preference applied to full and open competition. What does that mean? So if you are certified as HUBZone and you bid on a project that is open to competition, then you get a 10% price evaluation preference applied to the contract when you're being compared to a large business. If solely based on price and you and a large business have the same pricing, they will apply that 10% price evaluation preference, meaning that they're going to add 10% to that large business, to their bid, so that your bid would be considered lower. So this is the only federal program that applies this benefit outside of set-asides, because generally your benefit is for your certification only, right? Like you would only be able to pursue HUBZone contracts. But this program lets you use it on full and open competition as well. So where are these HUBZones? So across the country, there are more than 22,000 communities that are designated as HUBZones. So HUBZones are designated based on economic and population data from the Census Bureau and other federal agencies using definitions that are established by Congress. So the basis for all of these areas are high unemployment and or low income. Every 5 years, the HUBZone program is required to update the HUBZone designations to ensure the program continues to serve the communities most in need of assistance. This 5-year redesignation also provides small businesses with the ability to plan and invest in their HUBZone communities without fear that their designation may change from one year to the next. SBA regulations provide an additional 3 years of designation for expiring HUBZones. So these are known as redesignated HUBZones to help companies prepare for the transition to a new HUBZone. So if your area is going to lose its status, they do give you 3 years, to find another location if you wish to continue participating in the HUBZone program. So the map right now is currently frozen, right? And it's not going to be updated again until July of 2028 to reflect the changes to qualified census tracts, non-metropolitan counties, and then it's going to be updated, I believe, in 2026 to reflect expiring redesignated areas. And it can be updated throughout any year to reflect new and expiring governor-designated covered areas and qualified disaster areas as appropriate. If you visit the SBA website, you can find the HUBZone maps to look up your address and see if you are located within a HUBZone. The map is color-coded and easy to read. You can play around with it, zoom in and out to identify qualified areas. So this is a good tool to use if you're thinking about moving your business or opening a new business. We do recommend that you enter a specific address for best results because if you're just glancing at it, one side, could be eligible for the HUBZone program and across the street it's not. So be sure to plug in an address there at that green arrow. And then on the right-hand side, it'll tell you, yes, it's a qualified area, or no, it's not in a HUBZone area. Okay, now let's jump into the eligibility requirements for this program. So first, let us talk about size. So you must be a small business in accordance with the SBA's size standard table. So you want to make sure you've identified that NAICS code, make sure you meet the threshold for that to determine that you are a small business as set forth by SBA size standards. At the time of application for certification, a HUBZone small business concern must meet the SBA's size standards for its primary industry classification. And then at time of initial contract offer, a HUBZone small business concern must be small for the size standard corresponding to the NAICS code assigned to the contract. So if you're applying at the time of application, you want to make sure you have your primary NAICS code and that you're small based on that. But then if you're pursuing a contract, that has a different code, it could be a secondary code, not your primary code, you have to be small, for that NAICS code assigned to that specific contract. In addition to size, we will also look at ownership. Businesses must be directly and unconditionally owned and controlled by at least 51% U.S. citizens. If there are multiple owners making up that 51%, all owners must be U.S. citizens. The SBA does not consider holders of permanent visas and resident aliens to be citizens. Your business or principal office must be located within a designated HUBZone. So the principal office means the location where the greatest number of the concern's employees at any one location perform their work. For concerns whose primary industry is service or construction, the determination of principal office excludes the concern's employees who perform the majority of their work at job site locations to fulfill specific contract obligations. So if you have an employee that works at multiple locations, then the employee will be deemed to work at the location where the employee spends more than 50% of his or her time. If an employee does not spend more than 50% of his or her time at any one location, and at least one of those locations is a non-HUBZone location, then the employee will be deemed to work at a non-HUBZone location. Now, in order for a location to be considered the principal office, the concern must conduct business at this location. If you have, employees if all of your employees perform more than 50% of their work at job sites, then your business would not, comply with the principal office requirement, specifically, for those in construction and things like that. So if you want to go over a scenario or anything like that, we can discuss that offline if you're having trouble making that determination. Now, aside from being located in a HUBZone, at least 35% of your employees must also reside in a HUBZone. Now, the SBA has its own definition as to what an employee is for the purpose of applying to this program. So an employee means all individuals employed on a full-time, part-time, or other basis, so long as that individual works a minimum of 10 hours per week. So this includes employees obtained from a temporary employee agency, leasing concern, or through a union agreement. Volunteers are not considered employees, and you cannot count them as part of the 35% requirement. Now, the SBA defines reside to live in a primary residence at a place for at least 180 days or as a currently registered voter and with the intent to live there indefinitely. If you have an employee who just moved or has been at their new address for 30, 60 days and they don't have like an updated ID, they can demonstrate their intent by updating their ID or driver's license and submitting a copy of that. Now, when you are determining the percentage of employees that reside in a hub zone, if the percentage results in a fraction, you can round up to the nearest whole number. Again, if you have a specific scenario or unsure how to count employees and whether or not they qualify, feel free to reach out and we can talk about that offline. You can find the full qualification criteria for the HUBZone program in Title 13, Part 126, Subpart B of the Code of Federal Regulations. And that's what you see here on the red text if you're interested in looking up that information. Now, HUBZone regulations require that all certified HUBZone firms recertify annually that they remain in compliance with the program's requirements. So although there is no limit to the length of time a firm may qualify as a HUBZone firm, the certification is not a lifetime certification. You will need to recertify for the HUBZone program once a year, and this will typically be around your anniversary date, right, when you got approved for the program. Please note that if a firm fails to recertify within the required time frame, the SBA will propose the firm for decertification. So if you're unresponsive, they'll take that as you no longer are having an interest in being an active participant. Once you are in the program, once you're certified, take a look at the recertification fact sheet for helpful tips on completing these steps. And when it is time for your annual recertification, the program office will send you an email or a notice, to let you know that you're due for your annual recertification. So look out for that correspondence as well. During your active participation in the program, a program examination will also be required every 3 years. And this may sometimes include a site visit that would be conducted by a member of the district office, your local district office. So a program examination is an investigation by SBA officials to verify the accuracy of any certification made or information provided as part of the HUBZone application or recertification process. So you'll need to provide documents similar to those submitted with your initial application. So this could include corporate documents, payroll records, utility bills, a principal office lease, rental agreement, or deed. You will receive an email from headquarters with instructions for completing this step. So this is not something that you would initiate. This is something that our program office would initiate. Now, if a firm fails to respond, the SBA may propose decertification based on your failure to cooperate with the program examination. And here on this slide, we have linked the program examination fact sheet with more information. So you don't need to worry about this until you're actually an active participant in the program as well. So the HUBZone program is managed out of DC. So to get more specific answers on your application or just the program in general, we recommend you contact them directly. They do have a dedicated email address for all inquiries, hubzone@sba.gov. The HUBZone program office also offers conference calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they are available during those times to answer any questions you may have. So the number and conference ID are listed here. We also have, the fact sheets, checklists, details about eligibility and applying at our website, sba.gov/HUBZone. And then, of course, there's a link to the map there to check your eligibility for this program. Now, you must be proactive in your self-marketing for this program. The HUBZone certification program is not a contracting program. The program requires significant commitment on the part of the business to market its product or service, in order to succeed in the program. So you want to make sure you focus on areas in your niche market and prioritize those. Identify federal buyers, get to know them, identify the agency contracting procedures and those who make the buying decisions. You want to make sure you make contacts through small business events and network your business, right? When you go out to these events, make sure you carry your capability statement, that you list your certifications on there. It's a lot of self-marketing in order for you to be successful in this program. So this concludes the overview of the HUBZone program. We have 2 more to get through, but let me just check here our Q&A box. I'm not seeing any further questions in the queue. So let us jump into our next program. So when buying goods and services, the federal government limits competition for certain contracts to women-owned small businesses and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses that participate in the SBA's WOSB federal contracting program. So becoming certified for the WOSB program means that your business is eligible to compete for set-aside contracts within eligible industries. These contracts are in industries where women-owned small businesses are underrepresented, and some contracts are restricted further to economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. And the SBA maintains a list of those eligible industries and their NAICS codes. It is important to note that WOSB certification benefits only apply to federal contracting opportunities rather than those in the private sector. Now, the federal government's goal is to award at least 5% of all federal contracting dollars to women-owned small businesses each year. So joining this program makes a business eligible to compete for federal contracts that are set aside specifically for this program. Firms can still compete for contract awards under other socioeconomic programs that they qualify for. And you can also, if you don't want to apply for the WOSB, if your NAICS code is not listed, you can still self-certify as a woman-owned small business. You can identify as a woman-owned small business in SAM.gov, a self-certification, for the purposes of competing for other contracts. If you do the self-certification, you are not going to be eligible to pursue federal contracts that are restricted for SBA certified women-owned small business and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. And just for reference here, we have that in FY23, $30.9 billion were awarded to WOSBs. That's up from $28.1 billion in FY22. And these were in the industries for professional, scientific, and technical services, as well as construction. So how do you know if the WOSB program is right for you? Let us touch on the eligibility criteria for this program. So to be eligible for this program, a business must be a small business concern for the primary NAICS code or contract. The WOSB, EDWOSB program has limited NAICS codes, so you want to make sure it's one of your eligible codes are listed on that list. You must be at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women who are U.S. citizens. The 51% ownership must be direct and unconditional. Women must manage the daily business operations, including, a woman must hold the highest officer position within the business. The woman must work at the business full-time during normal working hours. Women must be the ones making the long-term decisions for the business. The women must have the managerial experience required to run the business. And for this program, there's no minimum amount of time for the business to be operational. You don't have to wait like 2 years for the 80 program you do. This one does not require a minimum time in business. Now, in order to qualify as an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, one or more economically disadvantaged women must unconditionally and directly own at least 51% of the applicant firm. So each individual whose ownership interest will be used to qualify for economic disadvantage designation must submit documentation demonstrating their financial condition meets the defined economic thresholds. So you'll see that these thresholds are in line with those of the 8A Business Development Program. So the personal net worth must be less than $850,000, excluding ownership interest in the concern and equity interest in the primary personal residence. Income must be $400,000 or less, and adjusted gross income averaged over the previous 3 years. Total assets must be $6.5 million or less for the fair market value of all personal assets, including primary residence and the value of the business concern. In order to demonstrate your eligibility for program participation, all applicants must provide proof of U.S. citizenship, regardless as to which certification you are applying for. The type of documentation required to be submitted to the SBA to prove the organization is owned, organized, and controlled by a qualifying owner is going to depend on the applicant business's legal form. So depending, on your business structure, that's what you would have to submit. So you can see examples here, right? If you're a limited liability company, a corporation, partnership, or sole proprietorship. So all of your documents must be valid at the time of submission. And, if they require signatures, make sure you have the signatures on them. The information contained in these documents regarding owners, percentages, and shareholders should align exactly with the information that is submitted on the online portal. So make sure that everything is matching on the application as well as the documents that you're actually submitting or as your proof, right? In addition to all other required documents, applicants that wish to qualify as economically disadvantaged will be required to also report financial information for all owners compromising 51% ownership interest to ensure economic disadvantage thresholds are not exceeded. So the following documents will be required for all individuals compromising 51% ownership. You will have to submit federal personal tax returns from the last 2 years, including W-2s, schedules, and attachments. If you don't have W-2s, you may submit your 1099s. You'll have to submit your federal business tax returns from the last 2 years, your financial statements, retirement account statements, all your personal financial information is going to be required for each woman that is claiming the economic disadvantage, as well as for your spouse. Detailed information is needed regarding the value of all assets, including cash on hand and in banks, accounts, and notes receivable, retirement accounts, stocks, bonds, real estate, personal property, life insurance, and any other assets, for liabilities, you're going to take a look at, loans, mortgages, any tax debts, or any other liabilities. For your income, they're going to take a look at your salary, your investment income, real estate income, or anything else. So make sure you disclose that information. You can also use that Form 413 to identify, that you would meet the thresholds for economic disadvantage. Now, the EDWOSB is a subset of WOSB. So as such, if you qualify as an EDWOSB, you automatically qualify as a WOSB. And then, of course, if more than one woman make up the 51% ownership, then all women will need to submit this information if you're trying to get the economic disadvantage portion of it as well. So as I've mentioned, to qualify for this program, your NAICS code must fall under a certain list of eligible industries. So not all NAICS codes are eligible to participate in this program. These contracts for WOSB or EDWOSB are for specific industries where women-owned small businesses are underrepresented. So if your NAICS code is not on either list, once you visit the link on this slide, then there are no contract opportunities for you under this program. So if your code is not listed, there's no need for you to apply because there's never going to be, an opportunity set aside. In a few years, they could update the list and add more. So you want to check back. If your NAICS code gets added, then it would be a good time to apply for the program. There are 733 eligible industries. So 626 are designated for limited competition among WOSB program participants, and 107 are eligible for competition among only SBA certified economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. Now, Congress does require the SBA to conduct a study every 5 years to identify industries in which small businesses owned and controlled by women are underrepresented in the federal marketplace. So the numbers you see here on the current table, the most recent study was conducted in October of 2022. So in 5 years, so of 2027, they should have, they will make updates to that list. If you visit our website, you can find the full study of the research that they did, how they came about to identifying these codes, and that's where the latest information will be posted. But we suspect that in October of 2027, it will be updated. So stay tuned for that as well. So the WOSB Federal Contract Program offers multiple avenues for firms that are seeking assistance. Of course, SBA's dedicated resource partners are always available to help our small businesses as well. You can use, SBA's local assistance tool to contact your local district office or women's business center. But this program is managed by headquarters, and only they can answer questions about your application. So if you have any questions throughout the application process, please reach out to them at wosb@sba.gov. If you are interested in signing up for the training that is offered directly from our program office, please send them an email to wosbtraining@sba.gov to get a copy of their schedule so you could sign up for that. Just to mention, for this application process, whenever practicable, the SBA will make its determination within 90 calendar days after receipt of a complete package. So that's the time frame they're giving us right now for them to make a determination of whether you're accepted into the program or not. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the queue, so I'm just going to continue on with our final presentation for today. So we're going to talk about the Veteran Small Business Certification Program, VetCert for short, right? So every year, the federal government awards a portion of contracting dollars specifically to businesses owned by veterans. Also, small businesses owned by veterans may be eligible to purchase surplus property from the federal government, which we're going to discuss in a slide in a minute. So first, let's talk about the benefits for certification under the VetCert program. So the federal government aims to award at least 5% of all federal contracting dollars to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses each year. So competition is limited for certain federal contract opportunities to businesses that participate in the service-disabled veteran-owned small business program. So joining this program makes your business eligible to compete for the program's set-aside and sole source contracts. Now, certified veteran-owned small businesses have additional opportunities to pursue sole source and set-aside contracts at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs under the VA's VetCert Program. The VA sets aside at least 7% of its contracts each year specifically for certified veteran-owned small businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. To apply for certification with the SBA, a firm must meet the following requirements. You must be identified by the VA as a veteran or service-disabled veteran, be considered a small business as defined by the size standard corresponding to any NAICS code listed in the business's SAM profile. have no less than 51% of the business owned and controlled by one or more veterans. For the certification as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, have no less than 51% of the business owned and controlled by one or more veterans that have been rated as service-disabled by the VA. Now, for those veterans who are permanently and totally disabled and unable to manage the daily business operations of their business may still qualify if their spouse or appointed permanent caregiver is assisting in that management. And you must complete an application and submit your supporting documentation at My SBA Certifications. Now, veteran-owned small businesses can access federally owned personal property no longer in use through the General Services Administration's Federal Surplus Personal Property Donation Program. Service-disabled and veteran-owned small businesses may get federal surplus property from the SASP in the state where the property will be primarily located and used. You will have to agree to the terms and conditions that are listed here on this slide. You must agree in writing that your veteran-owned small business is located and operating within the state, that it is, it is unconditionally owned and controlled by one or more eligible veterans, that you will use the property in your normal conduct of your business activities, that you are registered in the SBA's VetCert Program database, that you won't sell, transfer, loan, or lease the property, etc. So if you're interested in that, you can contact the State Agency for Surplus Property, SASP, in your state for more information. And again, you can also check out the General Services Administration Federal Surplus Personal Property Program. So you can obtain personal property that the federal government no longer needs. This surplus property includes all types and categories of like personal property, except land or other real property, certain naval vessels, and of course, records of the federal government. But you can find equipment with them as well to assist you in your daily business operations. To get the most up-to-date information on this program, I encourage you to visit the SBA's website. This program is managed out of headquarters, and we do not have access to your application here in the field. For program-specific questions, please reach out to vetcert@sba.gov. For more general questions, you can reach out to your local district office or one of our research partners. If you rather speak to someone, there is a dedicated call center that can assist, and that number is listed here on this slide. The call center is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And as of January of 2024, the SBA database of certified veteran-owned small businesses has grown to over 25,000 firms. And I can only imagine, that number rising. For most up-to-date information, you can also visit the frequently asked questions file that is available online as well. So this concludes the information on the VetCert program. And now the last few minutes before we go ahead and log off today is I'm just going to give you a quick little overview of My SBA certifications. This is the new application portal. This is where you would have to go visit. This is where you're going to submit your application and supporting documentation if you're interested in applying in any of the programs that we discussed today. So to reduce unnecessary customer burden, the SBA has combined its separate small business certification systems with distinct applications, compliance, and review procedures. So in the past, you needed to visit different portals depending upon which program you were applying for. But now they've bundled it all together. So we have this new system, My SBA Certifications. This is now your one-stop destination for SBA's small business certifications. Through this new portal, you'll be able to apply for multiple certifications all in one place. We estimate that, with this one portal instead of, 4 different ones, an application will be reduced by like 40% for a single certification and up to 70% for those firms that are seeking multiple certifications. And it should, speed up the review process, because I know for a time we got really backlogged, specifically with the Women-Owned Small Business Program, but this should speed everything up now that it's all in one place. So when you're ready, you can visit my SBA certification portal, certifications.sba.gov, and you're going to want to go in there and click on Should I Apply to get started. So the system's going to ask you a series of questions related to your business ownership, NAICS codes, readiness, and eligibility. So you're going to go through each little module there and answer the questions. Like for ownership, it's going to ask you, do you own 51% or more of your business? Are you a U.S. citizen? Are you a veteran? Are you claiming social disadvantage? Things like that. In the match section, it's going to ask you, do you sell what the government buys? So it's going to have you type in your NAICS code to see how much the federal government has awarded in your field, to see, if there are opportunities for you with the federal government. In the readiness module, it's going to ask, is your business ready to take full advantage of the SBA certification program? So it's going to be asking you, has your business generated any revenue? Can you invoice and receive payments electronically? Do you have a track record of delivering quality goods and services on time and within budget? Things like that. For eligibility, do you own a small business located in the United States? Is your business registered at sam.gov? Are you under financial limits? If you're looking to apply for like the 8A or economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, it's going to ask you those questions about your personal income, net worth, assets, and things like that. So depending on what you enter there, it's going to give you your results to tell you, which programs you potentially could be eligible for, right? You're going to see a matrix like the one we have here on this slide, indicating which programs you may be eligible for. So from there, you're going to want to visit the knowledge base to preview application questions, read tips for success, and know what documents to have ready when you apply, because there's going to be a number of documents that you're going to need to upload after you answer the questionnaire here in the portal. So here is a sample of all the information you will find in the knowledge base. You'll see things on here, how do I create my SBA certifications account, the guide for supporting documents. You can even see the application preview. So check those out before you start the application process, or if you get stuck somewhere along the way. So you can check out the screenshots and know exactly, where you are, what they're looking for, what needs to be uploaded. Here is a timeline of the application process, how everything is going to flow in this new system. So you will need to register your firm with SAM before you can create an account in My SBA. You will complete the application and upload your supporting documentation into this portal. Once the SBA receives the application, we will conduct an initial check of all the documents. If everything looks good, we will notify you that we have a complete application and will soon begin the actual review. If documents are incomplete or missing, we will issue a deficiency letter outlining what it is that you're missing, and the application will be returned to you. So after a complete application is received, an analyst will begin the review, and they may request additional information from the applicant before a final decision is rendered. So the analyst then makes a recommendation to the director of the program for which you have applied. The director makes a final decision to approve or deny your application. Once that decision is made, you will receive a letter. That letter is going to serve as your official date of entry into the program, or programs if you're applying for multiple programs. And then your approval date will be listed in SAM and DSBS. If you need any assistance during the application process, please feel free to reach out to our office or one of our resource partners that can assist for free with the process. There are a number of business consultants out there that are ready and willing to charge you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to go through this process, but It is something that can be completed completely for free with the assistance of, us here at the district office or one of our resource partners that can sit with you one-on-one and help guide you through this process. Now, if you experience any technical issues on the portal, please submit a ticket to the service desk. We have it linked here on this slide. And just for any general questions, they have a dedicated email box, certifications@sba.gov. Check out frequently asked questions. We have a link to our SBA resource partners. Depending on where you're located, you can go on there, plug in your zip code, and it'll tell you, who's closest. If you have any issues with SAM, System for Award Management, they have a dedicated phone line as well. If you want to see how to access a dynamic small business search, to run a search on there, we have the link here as well. Recently, our certification office is put out a PDF file of trainings that are coming up. So if you're interested in participating in any of these trainings, right, preparing for my SBA certification, certification eligibility requirements, and navigating the application process, these are being put on by our program office. So our experts will be conducting these. So if you would like to participate on these, please send me an email. My email is linked there at the bottom, and I can send you the registration link because each date has a different link. So that's why we didn't tag it on here. But send me an email, and I can send you the file so that you can register for these courses and hear, the information directly from our experts. So if you're interested in any of these trainings, please reach out to me. All right, so this concludes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to leave you here with my email and phone number should you have any questions. I'll stay on for a couple of minutes to see if we get any questions in the Q&A box. But if not, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we hope to see you on another one of our webinars. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.